ॐ यो देव सवितास्माकं धियो धर्मादिगोचराः प्रेरयेत्तस्य यद्भर्गः तद्वरेण्यम् उपास्महे। ओम हर हर नमः पार्वतीपतये हर हर महादेव। ओम त्र्यंबकै यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात्। ओम त्र्यंबकै यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात्। ओम त्र्यंबकै यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात्। ओम सद्यो जातं शंकराचार्य मध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्य पर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ओम नमः प्रणवार्थाय शुद्धज्ञानैकमूर्तये निर्मलाय प्रशान्ताय श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ओम पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम्। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। We are in verse number 29. Today we are continuing the fourth chapter. We are in verse number 29. I believe everybody has Bhagavad Gita copy either with you in home or who did not have, I gave. How many of you don't have a copy of Bhagavad Gita at all? Okay, open that. Yes. Now on the same shelf, in the bottom, behind there are some red books, hardbound red books, Bhagavad Gita. Take one copy. Yes. Who else wants? No, you don't have at all in your house also. One for her, one for her. There are many there. You also don't have at all. Three. One.
3 or 4 lines.
Yes. Okay. Verse number 28, fourth chapter. Here we are seeing a context where the Lord explains the different kinds of yajna. There are different kinds of yajna. What is the yajna? Yajna is the result of an action done in an attitude of surrender and devotion. Any action that you do with the sense of devotion to Lord, either in general as Ishvara or in specific as a Devata which is invoked, is a yajna, which is usually done either for wherever there is an offering for God involved, either as God in totality or God in particular as a Devata. Whenever an offering is involved, that process is called yajna. Since all actions are done by a karma yogi in a spirit of dedication to Ishvara, since an action is done by a karma yogi, all actions are considered as part of yajna. That is, the whole life is lived in the spirit of yajna. So in this context, there are so many kinds of yajna possible. Here the context of yajna The concept of yajna is being used to illustrate the different disciplines that one practices. There are different disciplines like pranayama, raja yoga, sense control, mind control, and doing specific pujas, ritualistic prayers. Like this, there are different kinds of disciplines. So all these disciplines are discussed, and the contrast between the different actions done as yajna, which produce either time-bound results or which produce purity of mind. These kind of yajnas are compared with the yajna of knowledge, jnana yajna. The jnana yajna is acquiring knowledge as a yajna. The sacrifice of knowledge means the yajna of knowledge means nothing but the process of studying, reflection and contemplation and being completely devoted to that knowledge. That is jnana yajna. So the contrast is being discussed here, and the superiority of the jnana yajna, how jnana yajna is superior to the other yajnas, is being discussed here. After we see the contrast between both, we will see how these are interrelated and connected. If jnana yajna is superior to every other yajna, that means I should not do anything else and straight go for jnana yajna. If that is the best, why not go for that? Very good. You know, it is like telling when you grow up, you can count and do addition and subtraction in an instant. 100 minus 80, 20. You know, 10 minus 8. Then if you tell a child what it will do, 10 in the finger, 2 in the mind, and something like that it will do, and then count 1, 2, 3, 4 like this, and then there is remaining 2. After a big process, it will give you an answer. Now, is it possible for the child to directly, unless it is some child prodigy, mathematics, born Olympiad champion or something, unless like that, is it possible for the child to calculate in the speed that we do? It's not possible. How did we arrive here? By going through all those steps. So all the other yajnas which are producing either time-bound results or which are the process of yoga, which produces a result of chitta shuddhi, purity of the mind, are different steps that prepare a person to come to the stage where the person can do jnana yajna alone. So that is the tattva, that is the intended teaching in this chapter. So he starts with this. Dravya yajnas tapo yajna yoga yajnas tatha pare swadhyaya yajna jnana yajnascha yatayaha samshita prataha. So too, there are those who share their wealth, those who follow prayerful disciplines, those who practice yoga, and those with firm vows, means resolve, and efforts to pursue recitation of their own Veda and self-knowledge. Swadhyaya yajna means study of one's own Veda. Suppose if my Veda is Yajur Veda, I am supposed to have a certain set of disciplines of external disciplines, like I will eat only this much, I will eat only this kind of food, I will eat only what I cook, what my wife cooks, something like that. There are some disciplines are there. Like that, with those disciplines and vows, that I will do 100 recitations of my Veda staying in one place. Like this kind of, you can take these vows and chant the Veda, one's own family Veda. This is used to be there. Or we can also do Swadhyaya. You can translate for you as, let us say, Lalita Sahasranamam is there, 1000 names of Lalita, 1000 names of Vishnu, or scriptures like Bhagavatam, the entire Bhagavad Gita. This weekend I will study the whole Bhagavad Gita once. This is the Swadhyaya Yajna. So like this there are yajnas, different yajnas are there. What he says. Now, he is coming to the concept of pranayama. So he is going to explain to you pranayama. Apane juhvati pranam, prane apanam tatha pare, pranapanagati ruddhva pranayama parayanaha. So here he is explaining the yajna, which is pranayama. Pranayama is being explained as yajna. That is, you are using the model of yajna. The model of yajna is being used to explain different things. You can explain different things as with a model. There is a model of cooking. There is a model of making coffee. Making coffee can be a model for how enlightenment takes place. How the hot water of Vairagya, when it goes through the essence of coffee powder, the essence coffee powder is the Upanishads, the jnana. And then the hot Vairagya, with Vairagya, when you go through the Upanishads, you get the essence of all the Upanishads, which is the thick, the truth, the essence of all of that. And when you mix it with the Shamadama and the bhakti of milk, with the bhakti of sugar, and which you mix it with the strength of yoga, it becomes a beautiful cappuccino, which is the life of an enlightened person. It's a model. So like this, yajna is being explained as a model. Yajna means you take something and then you pour in the fire and then it produces a result, a spiritual result, yajna. So here, he is giving yajna as a model used for explaining pranayama. So in pranayama, what do? You inhale, hold, exhale, hold. Any kind of pranayama involves either inhalation, exhalation or retention. Is there anything more to pranayama? The retention can be three types. Inhale and retain, exhale and retain, and suddenly retain. Kevala Kumbhaka. So like this, different kinds of pranayama. Here he is explaining the one simple kind of pranayama where you offer the prana to the apana. Prana is here in the upper portion of the body. Apana is in the lower portion of the body. So how do I offer prana to apana? You inhale and hold. And there is the urge to exhale is there in the background. You relax that urge to exhale and wait for the force to calm down. And you silence the background, different kinds of rush for the breathing. You relax the urge to breathe and wait for some time. That is sacrificing the prana in apana. And then you exhale. Exhale. At the end of exhalation, you hold the breath outside, external retention. And you dissolve the inhaling urge. That is sacrificing the apana in the prana. There is apana, which is coming down, which is making you inhale. So you are dissolving that urge back to its source. That is sacrificing the apana in the prana. Offering the apana in the prana is exhale and retain. Offering the prana in the apana is inhale and retain. So like this, doing these two processes, there are people who prana, apana, gati, ruddhva. Like this, doing repeatedly, there will be a point where you will be able to cancel both the urges of prana and apana. There will be a point where the prana and the apana, the downward current and the upward current, both of them will cancel, and you will result in a stage called Kevala Kumbhaka, where the prana absorbs into the measure of the body and the person is not breathing anymore. The breathing cortex switches off. That is called as Kevala Kumbhaka. That is what you get. Prana, apana, gati, ruddhva. That is the tendency to create inhalation and exhalation. That tendency is stopped. What does it give you? It gives you a very high level of steadiness of the mind. Patanjali also says. What Patanjali says in Yoga Sutra? He says, Tasmin sati swasa praswasyor gati vicheda pranayama. After accomplishing asana, after you have accomplished steady posture, staying steady in a posture for a long time, after you have accomplished that, the process with which you vicheda means you cut out and you reduce or you cancel. Swasa praswasyor gati vicheda pranayama means gati ruddhva, stopping, nirodha. That is, you stop the two urges for inhalation, the urge for swasa, inhalation, praswasa, the urge which creates the inhalation and exhalation. You stop these two urges and you achieve pranayama. And then there are a lot of explanations on that. So that's what is being discussed here. Pranayama is being explained as a yajna. It is a certain discipline which can give you a certain level of purity of mind. They say there is no tapas better than pranayama. Pranayama is the highest kind of tapasya. Tapasya means austerity. Pranayama is considered as the highest kind of austerity. Similarly, there is what purifies you. That which purifies you the most is jnana, knowledge. That we will see. So translate those others who are committed to the practice of pranayama. Stopping the flow of inhalation and exhalation, offer the outgoing breath to the incoming breath and the incoming breath to the outgoing breath. If here it means the tendency to breathe. We have to take it like that. Then the next one. There are these Kriya Yoga people, this Yogananda, this group, Babaji, this group, they extend this verse too much. They pull this verse too much because they are obsessed with pranayama. Their main practice is pranayama. So they try to get authority from, they get an approval from Bhagavad Gita, from other scriptures. So they want to say the only process which Lord Krishna taught to Arjuna, the secret technique of Kriya Yoga, you will read in this Yogananda Bible, the secret technique that Lord Krishna taught to Arjuna. He talks about it in the fourth book, then they will talk about this, and then they will, He talks about so many other processes. He is not talking only about Kriya. He did not say Kriya Yoga also. Okay, he just taught this pranayama. He has told many other kinds of things. Arjuna already knows pranayama. Krishna need not teach pranayama to him. Here the context is not to teach pranayama. Here the context is to mention what is pranayama in the context of yajna. Pranayama is a kind of yajna which is based on action, which is based on result, and which gives you a result of action. Later he will tell you all the actions are binding. Why Jnana Yajna is more superior to other yajnas? When it comes, he tells you the limitation of action-based practices. Action-based practices will not, why he is telling all this is to tell you that pranayama will not give you enlightenment. Pranayama will not give you moksha. No matter how many janmas you practice Kriya Yoga, you will not get liberation because Kriya Yoga is pranayama. And they will say this is the secret technique, and then they start extending and pulling it too much. This is one thing that many schools have this problem. They are very attached to a certain approach. So we have the Siddha school in Tamil Nadu, in South India. My yoga techniques come from there, but I don't go too much into them because those people are obsessed with transforming the body, because they are the ones who have a very advanced kind of medicine, probably even more advanced than Ayurveda, and they have a lot of things to prolong the body, health, and Hatha Yoga, mastery of Hatha Yoga, all these things belongs to Siddha groups. So what they will do, they will interpret every teaching according to the transformation of the body. It is called trying to see in a scripture what you want to see, but not trying to be open to see what the scripture wants to tell you. This is the problem, because everybody wants to prove their point. So when we go with Shraddha to Bhagavad Gita, we don't want to prove our point, but we want to understand what the Lord is trying to tell here. And that is why we follow a traditional commentary. When you follow a traditional commentary, when you follow the commentary of Shankaracharya, we have the process which brings out the intended meaning of Bhagavad Gita. What the verse means. And so we have to see a context. There is a process of interpretation. So we have to see the context. What is the context? Comparing the different kinds of yajnas with Jnana Yajna. That is the context. What is the topic of the chapter? The topic of the chapter is Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. That is the topic. This being the context, why he should teach a person pranayama? So then he is talking about so many yajnas. You see, some people offer the objects to the senses, fire of the senses. Some offer the senses to the fire of the mind. Like that we have different. The fire of self-control, mind control. They offer the senses. Like that we have. Like that we also have pranayama. Okay? That's all it means here. We should not put. This is not a very elaborate teaching on pranayama here. Just in case, if you happen to go to these pranayama schools who overemphasize these things, you will remember this. That's why I tell. The next one. Apare niyataharaha प्राणान् प्राणेषु जुह्वति सर्वे त्येते यज्ञविदो यज्ञक्षपितकल्मषाः. Then others who regulate the food intake offer the desire to eat into the digestive fires. They offer the desire to eat more into the digestive fires. All these people who observe religious disciplines become, without exception, those for whom the impurities of the mind have been destroyed by the yajna. Apare niyataharaha pranan praneshu juhvati. others who regulate their food intake. Pranan praneshu juhvati, those who offer prana to prana. And after that, they do niyataharaha, means after following the diet discipline. Niyataharaha means I don't eat whatever I feel like. Suppose if you want to do pranayama, for example, if you read Hatha Yoga Pradipika, it will recommend a lot of restrictions on food. When a person begins pranayama, the pranayama should be begun in a specific season. Spring is a very good season to begin pranayama. This is one. Or winter is a good season to begin pranayama. Rainy season is a good season to begin pranayama. And the one who begins pranayama, till the nadis are made pure and till the person attains to a certain level of perfection, should avoid meat, should avoid sour foods, pungent foods, old food, spicy food, should not take intoxicants. Like this, many restrictions are there. So like this, after following all the restrictions, this person offers prana to prana. Offering prana to prana means offering one kind of prana, like you control one kind of prana, and through that control you regulate every other kind of prana. What is prana? Vital energy. The vital energy that sustains different functions of the body. So that is a prana that is involved in circulating the blood, the life force to all over the body. It is called vyana. It is everywhere, in all the pores and everything. There is a prana that is involved in keeping you alive, keeping your brain ticking. Your brain is working. That is because of a prana called udana vayu. There is another prana that is responsible for digestion. It's called samana. There is another prana that is responsible for respiration, prana. There is another prana that is responsible for excretion, apana. So you have prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana. 5 kinds of pranas which do different functions. Then you have different functionalities. Naga, Kirkari, Kurma, Devadatta, Dhananjaya. There is a prana called Dhananjaya which disintegrates your body after death. That is why they say you should not, there are 2 schools. One school says you should not burn the body because you are torturing the Dhananjaya. Another school says you should burn the body because Dhananjaya is still stuck there. So you should liberate the Dhananjaya fast so that the soul can be free to reach the next loka. Like this, 2 schools are there. Each one has their own logic and their own justification. The Vedic system follows burning the body. If you are not a sannyasi, your body is to be burned. That is the method followed by the Vedic system. Okay. Now we will go into the commentary of this. Sacrifice the vital breaths and vital breaths. So what he says is, suppose apare neta aharaha netaha parimitaha aharaha yesham te neta aharaha, those who have strictly restricted the diet sacrifice the vital breaths in those very breaths, which means in the breath that is mastered, other vital breaths are sacrificed. These appear as though they entered into it. Here, these different functionalities of the vital forces is there. Okay? So what you do, you decide to regulate one vital energy. Like, let us say, I will regulate my food, where I am going to have control over my appetite. Today is Ekadashi. Some people fast on Ekadashi. On Ekadashi, I will not eat anything. So there is hunger. What to do? So your desire to eat is objectified, and the hunger is objectified, and then you do certain, you concentrate on it and you calm down the force of that. You don't allow yourself to come under the control of that prana first. Also, when you want to, let us say, when you do pranayama, you take control of the prana. So like that, when you use one control, when you take control of one functionality, first, you don't allow yourself to be under the control of that functionality. You learn how not to be driven by it. Because I am hungry, I don't lose my mind. To start with. And then what I do, I regulate the hunger. And I see if I can do some pranayama, plavini, these kind of things. And see if I can get some control over this. There are people who can shift from that samana, from creating the hunger sensation. If you pay enough concentration, you can calm down the samana. So in the process of disciplining and bringing under your conscious control the functionality of samana, in that process, every other prana gets mastered. So all the pranas merge as it were into this prana. That means you are not disturbed by anything else. Every other functionality is mastered through the mastering of this one functionality. That means every other functionality is of every other mastery is inherent in this mastery. So any mastery of any unconscious force, mastering any or regulating any one of the unconscious forces, you will gain the kind of mastery over every other unconscious force. This is the indication. And why they are doing like this? There are these all those people who are very conversant, who are very expert in doing all these different kinds of yajnas and disciplines. They will destroy their sins by the very acts of the sacrifice. So he says, what is the use? One destroys the different sinful karmas, different effects of the bad karmas that one has performed. What happened? What are these sins that one destroyed? We will see. Itaranaha vayubhedan tasmin juhvati te tatra pravishtaha iva bhavanti sarve api ete yajnavidah yajna kshapita kalmashaha. All those whose sins have been attenuated by these yajnas are conversant with the sacrifice. Kalmashaga yajnaihi yathoktaihi kshapitah nishitah. Kshapitah nishitah kalmashaha yesham te yajna kshapitah kalmashaha. Evam yethoktan yajna nirvatyah. So those people who are able to destroy their sins by the process of mastering this yajna. So what are these sins? Destroying the sins is a translation. So here, kalmasha means impurity. Okay. Here they translate it as sin. I don't know what is translated in this Bhagavad Gita. Those who destroy the sin or impurities. How is that? It is recommended that we don't keep the book on the floor. Book should not be kept on the floor. You keep on your lap or you should keep on a stand like this or in something.
All these have their sins consumed away by sacrifice. Yes.
So sins here translate that sins into impurities. Kalmashaha means impurity. What is the impurity? Impurity that does not allow you to concentrate. Impurity that does not allow you to clearly decide what is the goal that I should pursue. Confusion in goals, confusion in the methods for pursuing the goals. Not able, the worst kind of impurity is not being able to have Shraddha. That is the self. Knowledge of the self will liberate you. You are fundamentally eternal. You don't need to worry about this. Is what the scripture says. And when you go through this process, the result of liberation is granted for sure. I cannot be for sure. God cannot be sure about anything else. Even God cannot make sure that you will get a lottery. But even a complete illiterate can for sure tell you, you will be liberated. Why? Because the Veda says so, and because we have this is taken in terms of there are these things which cannot be verified. These things for which we cannot come to a firm conclusion by the logic alone. One has to approach with Shraddha. A person not capable of Shraddha has the worst kind of impurity that Krishna will tell after some time. So not able to have Shraddha. Then not able to be committed to a goal. Not able to get rid of certain preoccupations in the mind when I have decided to do something. Not able to consistently pursue a goal. Not able to think clearly. Not able to be objective in a given context and being carried away by subjectivity. All these things are different impurities that block a person from actualizing self-knowledge. First, they block a person from getting access to self-knowledge. Even if you have access to self-knowledge, why the self-knowledge does not translate into liberation while you are alive? When you listen, you are Brahman. Why right there you are not a Jivan Mukta? Because of the impurity. That is it. So, a person who goes through different kinds of disciplines called yajnas here is able to clear all the impurities in the mind, and the mind becomes pure, and the person will be able to be available to pursue a goal and will be able to actualize a goal, a purushartha. A person will be able to pursue a purushartha and achieve a purushartha. The highest purushartha being moksha. The next one. Now, yajnasishtamrita bhujo yanti brahma sanatanam nayam loko yajna take of the ambrosial remains of these yajnas and they attain the eternal abode of Brahman. Those who don't perform any yajna does not own even this world. Why then, O Arjuna, speak of attaining another world? Yeah. Those who partake the result of this, those who have or consume or partake of the nectar which is the leftover after a yajna, reach eternal Brahman. For those who do not perform yajna, nothing is gained in this world. How then can there be gained, something be gained in the other world? Commentary. The remains of the sacrifices are that which is left over. Yajna shishtam tabhushaha. Yajnanam shishtam yajna shishtam. After you perform a yajna, for example, when we offer the food, we do a yajna. When we offer the food to the Lord, you show the pranaya swaha, vanaya swaha, vyanaya swaha, and before eating, that is, we do a yajna. Also, we offer first the food we offer to the 5 pranas. We do some mantra. In India, we do this mantra. We do this Om Bhurbu Swaha and all that. Called Pariseshanam. If you go to any ashram in India, you will see Indians doing this. Whoever is initiated, they will do this 3 times around the rice, and then they will offer rice into the mouth like this. 6 times they will offer rice. That is, you are offering to the 6 entities. 1 prana, pranaya swaha, apanaya swaha, vyanaya swaha, udanaya swaha, samanaya swaha, brahmanaya swaha. So you offer to the 5 pranas and to Brahman, which is you. Okay, and then after that you Brahmanatma Amritvaya. Then you say, the Brahman, which is the self, is the eternal reality. You remember that. And then the food that is there is the leftover of this yajna. So it is Amrita. It is that which gives you eternity. That means what? That which is of pure nature. That which purifies the mind. The food which is taken as the result of yajna is considered as pure. There are some Shrauta yajnas, the yajnas based on the Vedic karma, where they offer animals also. In those days it used to be there, but nowadays also very rarely they do it. But that is the only context in which the Brahmins eat meat. Which is, it is not eating meat like, don't think it is like having a party meditative. Because this argument comes in different places in the internet. Those days Brahmins ate meat. So what is wrong in eating meat? Brahmins are consuming beef. If you read some stupid American author like there is one woman, Wendy Doniger, one very famous woman is there. She is known for few people from Harvard and Stanford. They are known for denigrating Hinduism. So there is a huge department that is working in America only to write all the nonsense, all the wrong interpretations about the Vedas. You just go Hinduism. Famous authors on Hinduism. You will see Wendy Doniger and a few other people and all her students. So they are. It's called. She has written a book, History of Hinduism. So in that you will find all kinds of things. They have very, very unimaginably horrible, profane interpretations of the tradition. And this is how the Western opinion on Hinduism is formed. Okay? And they write like this: Brahmins consume beef. I read that Brahmins in Rigveda, it talks about sacrificing a cow, sacrificing a horse. So why can't we go to McDonald's and have a burger? What's wrong in that? Having a burger is different. Sacrificing an animal in the yajna and then taking the meat which is the result of the yajna is completely different. Though it is considered as inferior karma in some other context. It is told as an inferior karma and you are supposed to look for higher methods of practicing, but these are also prescribed. There are different things prescribed in life. This is also so. What happens is they will offer the cow. There are different parts of the cow to be offered to different deities with the different specific mantras. And there is a mantra while you remove certain parts of the animal. Like that, it's a very, very complicated procedure. You cannot even think about it. And there is no space for enjoyment there. There is no enjoying the meat. And when they offer it to the fire, and then whatever remains from the yajna, it will be completely tasteless and there is a method of eating it also. You are supposed to take the size of one pea, this is mazare. The size of one mazare with certain mantras, you are supposed to offer straight into the throat and then swallow it. One or two balls like this, and which is completely tasteless. So this is called taking this is the way in which they used to, whatever meat they had, they used to have like this, which is the result of yajna. And that meat is pure. It is not having the bad karmic effects or the chitta shuddhi, the creating the impurities in the mind effects. So why I am telling this is because we are talking about yajna. And this concept of denigrating the yajnas and justifying the animal sacrifice in the yajna, the animal sacrifice which used to be done in the yajna is used as an excuse to justify the indulgence of eating meat. So this is a certain thinking that is going on today. So I wanted to mention this. It's very important to understand. The perspective is very, very different. So when you happen to read this, you will remember what we discussed here. Okay. So when you offer something in yajna, or let us say when you want to consume something, when I want to consume a resource, be it water, be it food, be it buying some new clothes, there is a yajna called charity. So if I am going to, let us say, if I am going to buy a new set of clothes for summers, the latest spring collection I want to buy. Before that, can I do Vastra Danam? Vastra Danam is, I have this much money for buying clothes. So out of that, I offer a certain portion for buying some clothes for a brahmachari or a sannyasi or some other poor person who cannot afford. Brahmachari means a student who cannot buy clothes by themselves, or a monk, or a nun, or a priest, or a poor person who is not able to afford the right kind of clothes. You can buy one clothes for that person. After that, from the money that is left, if you buy for yourself, that becomes the result of a yajna. The yajna called Danam. So because you cannot do Vedic yajnas, you can do Smarta yajna. Smarta yajna means the different kinds of sacrifices like charity, etc., prescribed by the Smriti, like Bhagavad Gita, like Manudharma Shastra, like that we have different texts that prescribe charity. So what you can see, what are the kinds of charity that people do in my tradition, you can see here, and based on that. You don't need to follow exactly, you can follow the local, you can trace the local tradition and you will know what are the different kinds of yajnas. Because Smriti is composed by people. And you can follow some yajnas and do. So anything that I want to consume, the point is this. A person who is consuming a resource, if the person consumes that resource after making the due offerings to the different entities, that means what? When a person consumes resource in a sustainable manner, you are not only a consumer, but you consume after being a contributor. After contributing, if you consume, that what you consume is pure in nature. That does not create negative consequences for yourself. In turn, it creates positive consequences for you. That is the idea. So, may you consume after contributing. This is the inherent spirit of yajna. So, what the Lord says here is, having performed the various yajnas enumerated above, they eat according to the Vedic injunctions. Here, the explanation is meant for the Vedic culture, which cannot be exactly translated here because it is not relevant. Nobody is doing Vedic karma here. Sorry, and we cannot do also. So they eat according to the injunctions, the ambrosial food, and they reach the eternal Brahman in case they seek liberation. If they are not seeking liberation, they reach heaven. So when they give the due to the gods and the Pitrus and all that, and after the yajna, when they take what is remaining at the yajna as a prasad, when they do that, that purifies them in a subtle way and it helps them to pursue their spiritual goals. It takes them closer to the spiritual goal. If they want liberation, it takes them closer to knowledge. It helps them to find the right conditions, find the right state of mind, find the right teacher, the right teaching, these kind of things. And if they are not looking for liberation, it will take them to heaven, etc., some higher lokas after death. The result of all the yajnas will come with them after death, and it will take them. So only what we do as yajna stays with us. The result of the actions done in a spirit of devotion and sacrifice, Only those results come with us in a positive manner after death. Our things don't come. The result of what we consume and what we contribute, that comes with it, which is the unseen result. Yajna is the unseen result of karma, which is called adrishtaparam means it is not seen, you cannot see. How do you know where it is there or not? Only with Veda as pramana. Taking the validity of Veda as a means of knowledge, with faith, with Shraddha, you accept that all the actions that we do create an unseen consequence, and that unseen consequence of action comes with you after death. And that takes a person closer to liberation. In the sense, either it gives you the conditions for study, or it gives you a higher world of dimension of life called heaven or any other higher form of life. Okay. From the logic of the situation, it follows that it happens in course of time. That means you do a yajna and then don't immediately, why I am not getting liberation. It means yajna will not give you immediate liberation. It means gradually takes you towards your goal. It has its own time of manifesting. So they say, if you sow the mango seeds in this season, you will reap mangoes the next season. Why am I reaping only papayas this season? Because last season I sowed only papaya seeds. Depending on what I sow in the past season, I harvest it now. What I sow in this season, I will harvest it later. Karma, yajna works like this. What offerings I make now, the result will determine my future. What is going on right now with my life is the result of what all I did before. It's called prarabdha karma. That is how we have an attitude of accepting what we have. I deserve what I get. I get something because I deserve it. Nobody gets anything if you don't deserve it. You got something positive because you deserve it. You got something negative because you deserve it. You worked for it, either consciously or unconsciously. This is the thing. So the concept of yajna, the karma and everything, the laws of karma, helps you to accept the present so that you can firmly, with a firm resolve and infinite patience and dedication and faith, you can carve your future. I cannot do anything about my present, but I can do my best in the given conditions so that I can decide my future. Because the concept, whenever I involve yajna, be sure the result is a must. You have to achieve the result in course of time, which needs patience and faith. Sai Baba was a great saint in India, Sai Baba. He used to say, Shraddha or Saburi. Shraddha means faith, Saburi means patience. Have faith and patience. He always used to say faith and patience. Because all spiritual matters and the results, spiritual results, are achieved over a long period of time. That is what Acharya says here. Which means it happens in course of time. Even in this world of human beings, is not won by a person who performs not even one of these sacrifices. Means a person who does not do any kind of yajna, the person who does not subject oneself to any kind of self-disciplining, any kind of conscious action and a self-discipline. If the person is not doing any of it, even the realm of a human body cannot be achieved. The human body is a result of thousands of good karmas done in the past, in thousands of lives. Only by that you have human body. Jantunam narajanma durlabham tatpurusham tato viprata. First verse in Viveka Chudamani says, among all the different births that you can get, human birth is precious. And you have gained it after a lot of conscious striving. After a lot, the consciousness, the power of consciousness in the mind has to gather and create a certain level of coherence and certainty. It has to gather together and it has to gather a certain level of power of manifestation and a certain level of awakenedness. To gather the conscious energy together and direct it towards a purpose is not an easy thing. Only when the power of consciousness has been harnessed into a concentrated force in a specific direction, only then a certain movement in evolution is possible. So if you have the blue whale in the sea, the blue whale's body is a result of the yajna of so many of the dinosaurs which have been trying to swim. So many dinosaurs, hundreds of dinosaurs did not bother about it. They jumped into the sea and they started, swimming and trying to adapt to the sea. Hundreds of thousands of them died. Few of them survived and passed on the skills to the next generation. And then in Darwinian evolution, finally you have the blue whale. That is a result of the yajna of so many of the other pre-species of the... They did that yajna unconsciously. It is a yajna. It is because they had to do it, they pushed themselves to do it. Only when a species pushes itself to accomplish certain thing and endures certain pains and endures certain struggle and keeps pushing in one direction, that gathers enough energy to produce something that is of a higher quality for a given purpose. So a bird to fly, it does a lot of discipline. It needs a lot of discipline. Every time that little, pigeon, every time it falls down, it has to get up and flap its wings. And once it is able to fly, the mother will not look at it. The mother will go and build some other nest and look for making other kids. It will not go with it. It has to fly. If it doesn't fly, it's going to die. So it is programmed in it. So it strives. Every time it is tired, it keeps striving. Somehow the karma pushes it to do it. For a human being, it can be done. They don't have a choice. Their instinct pushes them, pre-programmed. But we have a choice to push ourselves towards a conscious goal because we are not completely programmed. To a great extent there is programming, but also to an equally great extent there is choice. You do what we can decide and do. That is why the Veda teaches you the concept of pursuing your Purushartha. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Dharma, Artha, Kama. I can pursue charity, philanthropy, Vedic karma, spiritual practices. I can pursue security and different kinds of wealth and different kinds of image enhancement. I can pursue different kinds of pleasures. Now all this I can regulate it properly because only a human being has a ability to lose oneself completely into the pleasure, but all the animals it is regulated. One Swamiji used to say, even for dogs there is a season. For a human being, there is no reason, no season. He used to say, why you people are all stuck into pleasure like this? Because human being, wherever he puts his mind, wherever the human puts his mind and will, there he can get carried away. And so when it is done consciously, whatever is the action that makes a person more conscious and more self-responsible and more consciously directed towards an intelligently chosen goal, that makes the person gather the power of the mind to produce some long-term result. This is the whole process of discipline. So if a person has not been devoted to any kind of discipline, even this world is impossible to get, to be achieved. Even if the world of human is impossible to be achieved, what then about achieving the higher world? You can forget about it. If you are not capable of achieving even human world, you cannot achieve even heaven. Of course you cannot achieve heaven. And a person who cannot achieve heaven, how can he achieve liberation? A person who is not capable of the basic disciplines that are required to achieve something in this world or in the next world, the liberation is out of question for the person. That means liberation is not for lazy bums. That's what it means here. And how then, oh best of Kuru princes, can he win the other world? To win which special causal collocations, what is this? Kutaha anya vishishta sadhana sadhya kurusattama. How can this person win the other world? It means winning the other world means can be taken as attaining different higher dimensions or attaining liberation, for which special practices and special dedication of a different quality is required. How is it possible? If a person is not able to do even the basic discipline. That's what I say. And the next one. Yeha evam bahuvidha yajna vidada brahmano mukhe karmajan vidhi tan sarvan evam jnatva vimokshase. Now comes the punch. In this manner, many and varied religious disciplines are very elaborately mentioned in the words of the Veda. Understand them all to be born of karma. Brahmano mukhe means in the face of Brahman. In the face of Brahman means in the Veda. The face of Brahman, Veda is Brahman. Brahman in the form of sound is Veda, Shabda Brahma. So Veda is considered as the Brahman in the form of sounds. So in the face of Veda means in the Veda, in the face of Brahman means in the Veda. A lot of rituals and disciplines are discussed. Understand them all to be born of karma. And therefore, Anatman, knowing thus you will be liberated. How? By knowing all the different disciplines that are mentioned in the Veda are born of karma. By knowing that, how will I be liberated? Means, I understand what result they produce is time bound. Any effort that produces a time bound result is, that result is also, any effort that is time bound produces a time bound result. No time bound result is liberation. So anything that is time bound is not eternal, is limited. Anything that is limited and eternal is not the self. If you remember from the Viveka Chudamani class, whenever self and not self comes in the scripture, self, not self, wherever it comes, take it as Atma, Anatma. Atma, Anatma means take it as Satya and Mithya. Absolute reality, dependent reality. Ultimate reality, dependent reality. That which is unchanging, independent, and that which lends existence to everything else, but that which is self-existent, and that which is of the nature of consciousness, that is Satya, Atma. All that is limited, all that is created from it, sustained in it and falls back into it, all that is a product of time, all that ends in time, all that is limited in space and time, all that is Anatma, means they are not of the nature of Atma. Limitation is not the nature of Atma. They are Mithya. They are another category of reality. Like the wood is one category of reality. Wood is the basic category of reality. Scound is the dependent category of reality. Where is the scound? You remove the top, remove the legs, remove the support. There is no scound. But wood is still there. I break the pot. Clay is still there. So clay and pot belong to two different orders of reality. The self, Atma, you belong to one order of reality which is called eternity. All that comes and goes in time, all that is limited belongs to another order of reality called limited reality or empirical reality called Mithya, which is dependent. So all the actions and result of actions is Mithya. When I know that, I will have Vairagya. I will start looking for the eternal. My mind will start getting the right attitude to look for knowledge. I am ready for Jnana Yajna. That's what he said. How? Seeing this will lead me to liberation, but by giving me Jijñāsutvam. Again, in Mundaka Upanishad, our famous word, the person who has gone through the different experiences of life with a clear eye of discernment, and he has decided his goal. He is very devoted to his goal, Karma Chitan. That means he has arrived at that clear conclusion. The mind is settled down to pursue the goal of moksha. Nastya Kridena understands that he has done all the actions that needs to be done, and he understands that that which is eternal and timeless cannot be a result of action, and he becomes Nirveda Mayan. Karmachitam Nirveda Brahmana Nirveda Mayan means he is completely disenchanted with all the time bound goals. I will tell you, on the day of marriage, you are going to get married. Put the ring. Our marriage is temporary. Our married life is temporary. One fine morning, you and I have to be separated. You remember that? Every time you want to get married, I want to get into marriage, I want to get a permanent house, build your permanent house, inaugurate your house, and then say, this house is impermanent. One day everything will go back to dust. If you remember that, will you be very enchanted about it? At least for some time, 5 minutes, till you forget it. You will not be enchanted. Marriage, now you may kiss the bride, they say, instead of that, now you may read Bhagavad Gita and understand all this is impermanent. Your marriage is impermanent, your relationship is impermanent, life is impermanent, both of you are impermanent, all this world is impermanent. Now meditate on impermanence. And what happens? Nirveda Maya. At least for 2 minutes. Okay? So then and then you will go back with your married life, but that's okay. But at least for 2 minutes, you will be disenchanted with that time-bound goal. But if you meditate on the time-boundness of everything, you will get disenchanted with every other goal other than what is eternal. So Nirveda Maya, and he understands what is timeless cannot be achieved by time-bound action. Nastya Kritena. Then he goes and finds this guru who is Shrotriya Brahmanishta and asks a well thought over question after serving with an attitude to serve. All that comes. It comes here also. Understand them all to be born of karma. Knowing this, you will be liberated. Means what? Liberated by gaining maturity and getting the knowledge, you will be liberated. And then Shreyam, because he is talking about Tyaga, not by action, not by progeny, not by wealth, but by sacrifice alone, renunciation alone, immortality or liberation is attained. Comes in Isha Upanishad. That's what he's saying here. So, how do you, by recognizing all these are time bound, how you will be liberated? You will get the attitude of renunciation, which will take you to knowledge and liberate you. The next one is Shreyam Dravyamaya Yajna Jnana Yajnaha Parantava Sarvam Karmakhilam Partha Jnane Parisamapyate. Arjuna, this discipline of knowledge is superior to the different religious disciplines performed with material. All the different ritualistic offerings and sacrifices that you do, they are all excellent, very good. But the yajna of knowledge is much more superior to what all these materialistic offerings. All actions in its entirety get resolved in knowledge. Because the result of all actions is knowledge, they say. I will see that. Superior to the sacrifice with materials, sacrifice done with materials is the sacrifice of knowledge. Material sacrifice results in a fruit, not so the sacrifice of knowledge. So any dravya yajna, any action that you do with a sense of doership and ownership, here that's what it means. Ownership over result and sense of doership over the action. If you consider yourself to be the doer and you are interested in the result, any action done with different materials and when you offer it to the gods and all that and religious disciplines, they will create punya, some kind of a positive karma. If you do it wrongly, it will give you negative karma, whatever. So this different, any action produces the result. That affects you. You become the enjoyer of the result. And then that prolongs your samsara. That is not the case with knowledge. Because knowledge does not produce a binding result. Just see, knowledge itself, any normal knowledge, even a normal worldly knowledge, it does not produce any result. Knowledge is just there. Knowledge reveals the nature of a thing. So knowledge by itself does not produce any result. Knowledge only reveals the nature. But how this knowledge solves the problem of life? Only one knowledge solves the problem of life, which is the self-knowledge. Why? Because the knowledge means you are limitless, eternal, unbound, eternal, absolute truth. When this happens to be the fact of what you are, and when you know what you are, that results in instant liberation, which is your own nature, Swarupa. So the knowledge of one's own nature gives the result of liberation, and it does not produce time-bound results. So knowledge does not produce binding results like different yajnas of action. And then how the lower throws of dice also go to the highest throw. He gives a drishtanta about a game of dice. Whatever good creatures do, all go to him who knows what he knows. See, the result of all actions culminate in knowledge. It is like I am going with a bucket to fetch some water. I go to the well, fetch some water, will use. Now, if there is flood all around, will I go in search of some water body for the sake of water? I am surrounded by water. Then why should I go and look for water? So, how a person who is in the middle of a flood does not need to look for water. In the same way, a person who has realized the true nature of oneself will not look for anything. He has achieved all that needs to be achieved. Whatever the different achievements of different actions that produce time-bound result, whatever they give a person, all that is considered as achieved by this person because this person achieves infinite. Infinite includes all that is finite. So it is like when I have a spectrum which is in minus infinity to plus infinity, any other spectrum that you can think of is included in this spectrum. So then all the actions culminate in knowledge means knowledge includes the results of every other action. So knowledge being the highest attainment. What knowledge gives you is the infinite which is by nature, which includes every other finite achievement in every other sphere. All that was, all that is, all that will be is Om. Is contained in Om. What is that Om? I am the Om. So when I know what is me, all that was, all that is, all that will be is included in my Swarupa. When it is all included in my true nature, I have achieved all that needs to be achieved. Since knowledge produces this, it is superior to the results produced by action. So the yajna of knowledge is superior to the yajna of action. Oh, that's great. How do I get this knowledge? Oh, I am very interested. No? By what means the superior knowledge is one? Listen. Here he is talking about the same exact verse from Mundaka Upanishad. Pariprashnena sevaya tadvitti pranipadena pariprashnena sevaya. The same Mundaka Upanishad, the Lord is speaking here. Why? Because Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all the Upanishads. When you read Bhagavad Gita, you have as good as reading all the Upanishads. Here he says, Tadviddhi pranipadena pariprashnena sevaya upadeshyanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinah. Understand that which is to be known by prostrating to the wise people, by asking proper questions and by serving them. Those wise persons who have the vision of the truth will teach you this knowledge. He says, go and sit in a cave and inquire, who am I? Does he say this? If you go dive deep inside. No? Even in some scripture you will find, in Taittiriya Upanishad, he said, Tapasa Brahma Vijñāsasva, may you realize Brahman, may you know what is Brahman by tapasya, by doing austerity, by doing the inquiry and tapasya. Means what? He already gives him clue. He teaches what is Brahman. That from which everything comes, that in which everything is sustained, that into which everything goes, that is Brahman. Now, having known that, by tapasya, try to realize this. That means what? May you internalize the meaning of this. May you meditate on whatever you want to, whatever you experience, see from where the experience comes. That is Brahman. So ultimately, he realizes his own self to be the Brahman. But the teaching is required. Then he talks about, it is not only he says that everything, Satyam Jnanantam Brahma, Yovedrivatam, all that he says. Brahma Vidapnod Brahma Tadeshabhyukta, where he says that who knows the Brahman attains the highest, and the Brahman is there in the heart of one's own self, that from which the space came and everything came, that is Brahman. So all the teaching is there. After giving the teaching, the teacher says, okay, now go and meditate on the teaching and may you internalize the meaning of the teaching and may you clearly understand without any doubts what this actually means. That's what it is. So tapas here, the austerity, becomes an aid. The power of yoga and the power of samadhi that makes the knowledge firm. That's what it means even in that context. If you have studied that, that's what it means even in that context. It does not mean go and sit in a cave and then go dive deep inside. No. You have to go to the teacher, serve the teacher, and then the teacher will teach you. That's what he said. Bhagavad Gita also says, every scripture, every traditional scripture says this. Jnana comes by teaching alone. Jnana does not come by meditation. Meditation prepares the mind. The teaching alone delivers liberation. It's very, very important. By simply sitting, you will not get enlightenment. Understand that which is to be known by prostrating to the wise. Prostrating to the wise. Why should I prostrate? This is all Indian culture which is being imposed on me. I don't want, I will say hi to the teacher. You say hi. How does it feel? You say namaste. How does it feel? You bend down and touch the feet. How does it feel? the concept is different because when you bend down, the mind bends down. Why we have this culture in India is because when somebody higher than you comes, you bend down and you touch the feet is a sign of subjecting your ego under the ego of that person. I allow my ego to come under, I allow myself to come under the influence. This is Shraddha. Shraddha means surrender. I completely allow myself to come under the influence of the culture, influence of the teaching, influence of the system. That is called Tadvitti Pranipadena Pariprashnena Sevaya. There are three things here. Pranipadena, falling at the feet. To Pariprashnena and Sevaya. Pariprashna means well thought over question. I don't go to the teacher with all kinds of stupid questions without processing the question. All questions are good, but kindly process your question. If you want a worthy answer, if you want the right answer, process the question. When somebody went to one Zen master, he was mopping the floor. Master, why are you cleaning the floor? Because I'm here. But why are you cleaning the floor? Because floor is dirty. But okay, but why are you cleaning the floor? Because I'm here. Okay, but why you have to clean now in the hot sun? You are struggling, old man. Because sun is there. No, it means different things in different dimensions. But here I am using this, it's like if you go and before you ask the question, you have to really think. When you really think, and then when you ask what is the purpose of life, you go and ask. So, master, what is the purpose of life? So, depending on how crazy the master is, you will have all kinds of answers. Fellow will say, purpose of life is liberation. Then this fellow the student, some young kid comes. What is the purpose of life? The kid is bored actually. They ask the child to study for exam and all that. You study for exam, you break your head and do everything. And then there is holiday. Holiday, your parents are not taking you to any exotic destination. You wanted to go with your friends to some beach. One of your friends is going, and then but you have to sit in the house. You have to clean your house, or you have to do something. There is always we have to do something that we don't like. So the kid is bored. Says, you have to go through all this and say, what is the purpose of life? It's a little philosophical kid. So it's instead of asking what is the purpose of being constantly bugged by my mom, he is asking what is the purpose of life. Then the teacher is, purpose of life is liberation. Then what is that is nice. So how do you get liberation? By taking sannyasa and by serving in the ashram and then by listening to the discourses and doing meditation. That looks nice. I don't need to do a lot of stuff. And then he looks out. All the monks are getting food at the right time. They don't need to do anything. No homework. No hard work. Unfortunately, when your mind is clouded by escapism, you will not see the hard work the monks are doing. You all think, you see in a Zen movie, everybody goes in straight line, in a bowl, everybody sitting straight. You go to Indian ashram, they're doing some bhajan. Then you are taking bath in Ganga, then basking in the sun, listening to some discourse, then chit-chatting. This is what you see. But you don't see all the headache that goes into administering the ashram. Every junior monk has to serve the senior monk. And there's a big hierarchy there. There is all the difficulties that you see in your normal life is also there in ashram life. But the teacher will not say the purpose of life is liberation. The fellow would have pursued some good career, would have got some job, having a lot of unresolved desires, but is not able to go through some discipline. Instead of that, purpose of life is liberation. When you give some loose, if you ask a loose question, you will get a loose answer. If you get a loose answer, you will become a loose. That means you are not going to become loose, and then one fine morning you will find yourself in the middle of all that you did not want. That's why you have a lot of people leaving their normal life and coming to spiritual life and then getting frustrated after 25 years, after 35 years, they get frustrated. They don't know what to do. Now they cannot pursue normal life, they cannot pursue spiritual life because they asked a stupid question to a stupid person. So if the person is not interested, he will give all this kind of answer. Purpose of life is liberation. So if somebody tells this purpose of life is liberation, that means the fellow doesn't know what he is talking. He is just parroting what his another guru said. He is also talking the same thing. So what is the purpose of life? For who? Purpose for who? Purpose is always for an individual. So a pariprashnena means the person has gone through a well-lived life. The person has lived the life intelligently, has questioned the life, lived the life deeply, has gone through experiences without conflict, has examined the different things that has to be achieved. When you go into Upanishad, You have different kinds of people who achieve who approach the teacher for jnana, for liberation. Who approaches? The fellow who says, what all you know? First you tell me what all you know. Sage Narada goes and approaches another sage for jnana. That Avatar Dattatreya goes and approaches him for knowledge. And Dattatreya says, okay, tell me what you know. I know mathematics, I know physics, I know science, I know astrology, I know all the 4 Vedas, I know this, I know that. He's a huge lift of all the knowledge and says, I don't have this. So where are we? And then you go to this Shvetaketu. Shvetaketu says, he asked, the father sees the son coming. He's coming very arrogant. He finished all his studies, he's coming home. Harvard graduate, no? Like you walk like 2 feet above the ground. Like that he comes into the hermitage of his father. His father is also a rishi, but he sent him to study under some other rishi because if my son is studying under me, he is going to take unnecessary privileges. So let him go and get learn life under some other teacher. So he sent him somewhere else. So he is the best student there, gold medalist, and comes back. Arrogant. I know everything. Something is wrong with this guy. Means he has not learned properly. Oh, what have you learned? I have learned this, I have learned this, I have learned that. Big list. Have you learned that by knowing which everything can be known? There is nothing like that. How do you know? If there was something like that, my teacher would have taught me. Or maybe my teacher, no, there is something like this. There is something like that, and maybe my teacher didn't know. Did you ask him for that? No. If he had known that, he would have taught me. I am the best student. Why should he withhold this from me? But this is not taught unless you go and ask for it, sir. So the father says, please go and ask your teacher, there is something like this. And then he goes to the teacher, runs to the teacher, and then asks, that is that by which something is to be known. Can you tell me? Your father said this? Go and learn from your father, etc. Runs back and then falls at the feet. And then ready to say, please teach me that by knowing which everything can. Adi Bhava Brahmede, oh God, please teach me about Brahman. And the teaching begins. No? So, humility is required for jnana. It is not like getting some MBA graduation. So unless your ego surrenders, because the knowledge is about you, since the knowledge is about you, your mind is not ready to surrender completely at the feet of the teacher or at the feet of the teacher. Why the feet? Also, the feet signifies the path in which the teacher walks. The feet is that which carries the teacher. It means feet symbolizes the tradition. So, conveniently don't replace the feet with the tradition. That is why in India when we see a monk who is a teacher, we first touch the feet. It is a traditional practice which has an esoteric value, which has a pranic value, which has a traditional value, it has a cultural value, it has a psychological value, and it has a philosophical significance. We have a fancy now. Nowadays what we do, when something has a philosophical significance, when we tell you the logic, the philosophical significance behind something, we take only the philosophical significance and we will leave the action part. The philosophical significance will not become a living reality unless you do the actions that pertain to the philosophical significance. No? May you offer food with love. Oh, why should you smile when you give the food? Because it is a sign of love. Okay. I love the person. Hey, eat. I love you. How does it feel? And offering with the right, when the attitude is there, the attitude expresses in the behavior. Right? So, we do it with all kinds of things. What is the behavior that we will have if the mind is ready to surrender completely? Give me an option. Because that concept doesn't exist. You cannot surrender to anything. We have one concept in the West, kneeling down. In Christianity, you are down on your knees. Unfortunately, the men only go down on their knees in front of the woman. So all the people are down on their knees in front of passion. Instead of that, may we learn to go down on our knees in front of wisdom. Very simple, it's very easy. In fact, in the West it is easy for men to surrender. They only kneel down and propose. From India, when we look at this, it's very ridiculous actually for us, because the concept is, they say that it is the respect for the woman and all that. If it is that, I am very happy. But the problem is, what makes the person, that helplessness in front of infatuation. helplessness in front of infatuation makes the person kneel down in front of the woman with whom the fellow is infatuated, but is not able to kneel down in front of the Lord. Not able to kneel down in front of the teacher. There he wants equal treatment. Okay, tell me what is Brahman? So what do you think about this enlightenment? These kind of questions. They will not. This is not the way it is done. Unless the person is ready to surrender, and if you are ready to surrender, you are ready to serve. Pariprashnena sevaya. Sevaya means serve. Why should you serve? Because this teaching is priceless, and the teacher lives on alms, and the teacher is completely selfless, and he has nothing to achieve for himself. So the person is ready to serve. He has nothing to withhold. I am ready to serve with all my resources. What is the use of all these resources if it cannot give me what is eternal? But this fellow can teach me what is eternal, what is timeless, what is infinite. And what is equal for that? Is there anything that is equal for the infinite? So when I understand what it means enlightenment, what it means self-knowledge, what it can give me self-knowledge, so what this teaching can do to me, when I really understand, there is nothing that can be held back. I am open with all my resources to serve the teacher. That is what is pariprashnena sevaya. So the question, that is well thought over question, is asked to the teacher when the teacher is pleased and touched by the service given by the student. He is touched and then that heart opens and then he flows. He is there caring, and the care flows to the student. When the care flows, then when you ask the question, the teaching comes. And the teaching will come in a way that will touch the heart of the student. That is the traditional method. So he says, Tadvidhi Pranipadena Pariprashnena Sevaya Upadeshyanti Te Jnanam. They will give you that knowledge. Jnaninas Tattvadarshinaha. Who will give you? There are two words used here. The wise people who are the seers of the reality. Here, the two words are used for the teacher here. Okay? How comes bondage? Well thought out questions. How comes bondage? How is liberation? What is knowledge? And what is ignorance? Questions like this. The teacher, the knowers of Brahman, thus won over through humility. You win over the teacher with humility, will instruct and impart this knowledge. Here the Acharya gives a very important commentary. Rakshayena avarjitaha acharyaha upadeshyanti kadayishyanti te jnanam yatokta visheshanam jnanaha. Jnanavanto yatokta visheshanam jnanaha. Among even these, among all of these wise knowers, only some of them are well established in the truth as it is, others are not. So we have to do the checking. Is the person living according to the knowledge? Is the person free from kama krodha? Is the person free from the vices of desire, kama krodha, anger, jealousy, greed, delusion? Mother is this egoistic, taking different ego positions, matsarya, jealousy. Is the teacher free from all these vices? Does the teacher have viveka, vairagya? Is he attached? Is he getting attached to all kinds of things? Is the teacher free from attachment? All this can be checked. That the students are encouraged to test the teacher for all these things. The students are encouraged to, they say the student and the teacher live together for 12 years in the hermitage. Teacher is testing the student is testing the teacher. Both of them. Because you cannot accept anybody unless the signs of knowledge are present. How the signs of knowledge are present? So we don't know, because the signs are there, the person is a knower or not, we cannot say. But we look for, generally the person must be sattvic. Generally the person does not hold on to anything. The person is not manipulative. He doesn't have a sense of insecurity. The teacher must not have sense of insecurity with oneself. The teacher must not be excessively dependent on things. And the teacher must not be very anxious to teach. It's not overwhelmed by the teaching. Where you are not ready for the teacher must always be focused on the welfare of the student. What the student wants, what he wants, what she wants. what is best for the person. That dedication to the welfare of the student will be there. That complete unconditional, open-handed offering will be there. The teacher will not hold on anything. The jnani, a person who lives according to the knowledge, is not capable of having something personal. Knowledge will make sure that there is no personal will whatsoever. You cannot, if you see that, even though there may be some instances where the teacher might act as though he is personally motivated, if you really observe, if you have the eye to observe, person is completely empty inside, not completely open and selfless and impersonal. Nothing touches, whatever comes goes, nothing stays there. No? That complete impersonal openness will be there. So, Sattva-darshinaha means here two things. One, the person is a Shrotriya and a Brahmanishta. Not all of them, only those who have realized, not all of them are qualified. And only those who live according to the knowledge. Only those when they impart the knowledge is effective. In the sense, for example, we hear about a person listening to all kinds of discourses. Like we have great scholars, we had like Kapali, Shastri, Kavya Kanta, Ganapati Muni. These were all people who supposedly got the knowledge under Ramana Maharshi. Okay. So they are already well studied. You know, they know all the Vedas and everything. They have already studied a lot. But they went and sat with Ramana Maharshi. Within a few conversations, they understood the significance of the scripture, of the teachings. How? Because Ramana Maharshi is established in the knowledge. Being established in the knowledge has its own effect. What you teach becomes effective in the student's mind. A teacher who is established in the knowledge, who has owned up the knowledge, when he transmits the teaching, it immediately becomes effective. It has an impact on the mind of the student, and the student is able to carry the essence of the knowledge in their personal life, in their personal space. The mind is able to be established in the knowledge relatively more than when you listen to a scholar. A scholar who is not established in the knowledge will not be able to create the required impact in the mind of the student. But the teacher who lives according to the knowledge will be able to create the impact. So that is the thing here. Yathavat tattvadarshanaशीलाः aparena atha विशिनष्टि तत्वदर्शिनः इति ये सम्यक् दर्शिनः तैः उपदिष्टं ज्ञानं कार्यक्षमं भवति न इतरत् इति भगवतः पदम्. This is Lord. Madam means this is the Lord's opinion. He says. Yat jnatva na punarmohameva yasyasi. In these circumstances, the following utterance becomes significant. Yat jnatva, by knowing, by grasping that knowledge, you will no longer be deluded as you now are. Through that, you will behold all beings in the self and then in me. Punarmohamevam yasyasi pandava yena bhutan yasheshena drakshasyaatmanyathomayi. By grasping this knowledge, what is the nature of this knowledge? If the knowledge has taken place in you, by this knowledge which was imparted by these teachers who are committed to the truth, you will no longer be deluded as you now are. Further, by the power of it, you will behold all beings from the Creator down to the stocks and stones directly in the inner self. That means you will see within you all this. The vision of the self will include all that is, all that was, all that will be. And they all dwell in me will be your realization. They all dwell in me. Mat samsthani, all of them, mat samsthani, all of them remain, or all of them are sustained in me. All that is around is sustained in me. All that is around is sustained in me. It's called akandakara vritti, where you understand you are the totality. So that will not only be a simple information, that will be a very living, alive emotion, and a very living, alive feeling, where you feel everything inside the definition of yourself. And अथो अपि मयि वासुदेव परमेश्वर च इमानि इति. Then also you will realize them in me, Vasudeva. You will realize they also are in the Supreme Lord. The idea is that Arjuna will realize the identity of the self and God, which all the Upanishads have established. He said you will realize the oneness between you and the Lord, which means what? The Kundalini will go up your spine, and when it reaches Sahasrara, your body consciousness will merge with the universal consciousness. No. As the consciousness is in the body, while you are having your cookie, you will know that the cookie is me, the eater of the cookie is me, the process of eating is me, the maker of the cookie is me, the bakery is me, the road is me, the world is me, all this is me because I am the Lord. The Lord is me. All this is me, I am the Lord, all this is in the Lord, and the Lord is me. I and the Lord are one. This is a knowledge, this is an understanding which comes alive in every moment of life. This is the nature of the knowledge. So if the teacher is able to make this happen in you, that person is the worthy teacher. So how will I know whether the person is a worthy teacher, whether this is happening or not? Or at least I am going, I am getting ready for this. Either I am not ready, or the teacher is not okay, or the teaching process is not okay. Here, a few things are important to be mentioned. I will mention them, and with that we will finish the class. Jnaninaha Tattva-darshinaha, the wise people who are the seers of the truth. Now, in the commentary, he talks about two things. One, having the information that everything is Brahman, I am the Brahman. Anybody who has done enough Google about self-realization knows this. So all of them are Jnani. Tattva-darshinaha means the one who owns up this knowledge, the one whose intellect abides in this knowledge, the one whose buddhi is firmly established in the knowledge, and there is no vagueness about this knowledge, and where there are no habitual, or where there are minimal habitual errors in the buddhi, and where in the person in whom the vasanas have subsided. Also in another context we saw, the teacher is like spent up fuel. Spent up fuel means, it is like fire is there, the coal has burned and it is smoldering. This is that smoldering fire. If you put anything on it, it will burn. And if you blow a little bit, it will burn. That means the teacher is not very keen to save the world. Two, there must be some mark of renunciation. Either you see, if the person is a karmayogi, is a very active person, then the lack of attachment, you can see that nothing touches this person. You can see that. That is a mark of knowledge, vairagya. And also, there must be the methodology of teaching. Jnaninaha Tattva-darshinaha means commitment to the knowledge through a committed way of life, which shows in the person's ability to be detached across all situations, the ability to stay in a way in inner stability where the person is not carried away by anything, and also knows the methodology of teaching, knows how to handle the mind, knows how to handle the ego, knows how to handle the different sense cravings, and also knows how to impart that teaching to the student, and also knows how to make the student develop Shraddha if there is no Shraddha. If there is Shraddha, he knows how to actualize that Shraddha into self-knowledge. So he knows how to translate the wisdom of the scripture into a realizable, actualizable knowledge, the living reality in the mind of the student, which is the methodology of the teaching. That means the person who has come in the Sampradaya. So all this is taken care by the quality control of what is called as a tradition. So tradition is the quality control that ensures that actual scholar, but it's also a person who is committed to that knowledge and whose knowledge reflects in their way of life and whose knowledge reflects in their presence and in the being. So that is what is being talked about here, Jnaninaha Tattva-darshinaha, which means we have to remember the recommendation of Shankaracharya, which is asampradayavit sarvashastrajno api murkhavate apekshaniyaha. If the person even though the person may be well read in all the scriptures, even though the person may be so-called enlightened, reject that person like how you would reject a fool if that person's methodology is not according to a tradition, according to the tradition. This is the recommendation of Shankaracharya. In this case, the person who is taken as the prime example to be avoided for the purpose of approaching the person as a teacher. Who is the person, the best example to be avoided as a teacher? You can go to that person and take his blessings, but you cannot approach that person for teaching. Who is the example given? Lord Buddha. Asampradaya. Buddha is asampradaya. He has not come in he does not act according to the sampradaya. Though he has studied under Sankhya Munis, under different masters of Sankhya, he does not come forth according to the sampradaya. He does not teach according to the sampradaya. He wanted everybody in the world to get enlightened, which is not possible. He confused the Pravritti Dharma and Nivritti Dharma and created a huge confusion in the Vedic Dharma in India. And because of that, so many wrong schools and wrong approaches to enlightenment had come, and because of that there was so much of confusion, because this person who was enlightened is not fit to be a teacher. He can be a great sage if you just serve him, it may give you purity of mind. It is a yoga to be near Buddha, but it is not the right person to ask the question of what. That is why when they asked Lord Buddha 6 transcendental questions, he kept quiet. You go and ask these 6 transcendental questions to a traditional teacher of Vedanta, he will not keep quiet. He will say, Vedahametam Purusham Mahantam. I know that highest Purusha who is beyond darkness, who is like the sun, effulgent, self-effulgent, absolute reality, the self. I know that. That is how it starts. Vedahametam Purusham Mahantam Adityavarnam Tamasat Parastar Tamevam Vidwan. Anybody who knows that Purusha as oneself, Amrita Iha Bhavati, that person attains eternity right here. This is the teaching. Every Veda proclaims it. Every traditional teacher proclaims it. Every sage proclaims it. They don't keep quiet when you ask, what is God? What is the world? What is supreme? They may say, you are not prepared. You get prepared and come, I will teach you. It is there. That is Brahman. That is the absolute. That is the, that this assertion is very, very important. A traditional teacher who is capable of teaching will not keep quiet in front of a transcendental question. So this itself shows that person is not capable of teaching. Okay. So when Lord Buddha is dismissed as a proper teacher for approaching for teaching, who else can stand in front of that? Any other person who is so-called enlightened, but not according to the tradition, where are they? This is called Pratama Malla Nyaya, the logic of defeating the best boxer, best wrestler. If I want to become heavyweight champion, all I need to do is to go and beat the current heavyweight champion. In those days when I remember only that name. In those days when I was a school student, I know one guy called Mike Tyson, who used to be I don't know who is currently. Then there was one Hollywell, somebody came, Frank Bruno, somebody came. This is all I know. After that I have no idea. So this Mike Tyson, if I wanted to become the world champion, I am supposed to go and hit Mike Tyson. So if Mike Tyson is defeated, no boxer in the world can stand in front of me. Because I am the heavyweight champion. If I am Muhammad Ali, I have become Muhammad Ali by defeating the current heavyweight champion, not by fighting every kid on the street. Right? So in the same way, if Lord Buddha itself is defeated for the purpose of being a teacher, everybody else is gone. Means he is the embodiment of perfection in yoga. He is the embodiment of perfection in renunciation. When he cannot be teacher, who are all these guys? That is the logic. So asampradaya murkavata apekshaniyaha. May you remember this in the mind. You may go to them for every other purpose, but not for self-knowledge, unless the person knows how to teach and has come in the tradition of teaching and follows the methodology given by the tradition of teaching, and the mind is committed to the teaching according to the certain basic standards at least. That person cannot be looked up to as a teacher and is not to be approached as a teacher. Not only that, for the purpose of self-knowledge, see, it's very important. For the purpose of self-knowledge, this person is to be regarded like how you would regard a fool. You go and ask a mad guy for direction. How do I go to, you are in Bucharest. How do I go to Bucharest? You can never reach Bucharest. What is the use of this? No, you are already in Bucharest. You have reached Bucharest. Where in Bucharest you want to go? It is useful. If the person is, he knows it's okay, let me have some fun. There are so many kinds of people, they can misdirect you. And they themselves may not know. Nobody knows how to reach Bucharest, but we are all searching. Let us all search together. This is another group. Why don't you go and sit and meditate on what is Bucharest? Who is to reach Bucharest? I am enlightened. I want to reach Bucharest. You are everything, sir. You are Bucharest. Why do you want to go to Bucharest? This is only useless. So the answer should come according to the question. The person's purushartha should decide the teaching. That is why if you are looking for peace of mind, a normal everyday peace of mind, you don't need self-knowledge. You just need to take a deep breath and then eat some vegetarian food and not get overworked up with all kinds of things. You will have peace of mind. Don't break your head with the answer. You want to have some fun? Go and have fun. Okay? But understand the limitation. Go and have fun in a responsible way so that you don't hurt yourself. So a guy comes, so that my teacher always used to say, don't answer the question, but answer the one who asks the question. Answer the questioner. It is like, I put it like a nail in my head. I always remember this. Never answer the question, but answer the questioner. A teacher, a traditional teacher is a person who answers the questioner, not the question. Because the question comes from the questioner. What is important is the questioner, not the question. Answering questions is entertainment. Answering the questioner is teaching. That is why it is important to go to a teacher who is according to a tradition, who is ready to own up the tradition, and who is trying to at least match up to the benchmark set by the tradition. If not the benchmark, you may not be able to get the benchmark. There are great masters who are benchmark. But we at least try to see, can I get a little bit closer to the benchmark? No? The commitment to the sampradaya will be there in the teaching. So it is very Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate Om Shanti 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 Sarve Janaha Sukhino Bhavantu Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Om Namah Parvati Pataya Har Mahadeva Om Tat Sat Chitrambalam. Questions for 15 minutes.